Getting back to the president's budget, his plan will reduce the federal deficit. He said he plans to raise taxes on the very wealthiest Americans, a minimum 20% tax on the incomes of households worth $100 million or more. But the president also says anyone making $400,000 a year or less will not pay any more in taxes. The president also plans to raise the corporate tax rate to 28%. Of course, Congress is responsible for passing and implementing the budget, so nothing here is a done deal. Joining us now for more on this is Terry Haines. He is the founder of Pangaea Policy in Washington, D.C., which predicts and analyzes U.S. and worldwide macro policy and politics. Terry, welcome. Great to have you with us. So let's get to President Biden's budget proposal for fiscal year 2023. What do you believe it means for U.S. investors?
What I've told markets today is pretty much the same thing I tell them every year, is that this year's budget, regardless of the president, frankly, this year's budget does not matter. And the reason for that is very simple. What matters on fiscal is spending, appropriations that Congress and the White House agree upon. Congress passes it, and the president signs it. And that just happened for this current fiscal year a couple of weeks ago. And it took almost 6 months or more past the beginning of the fiscal year to negotiate. The president is bound to deliver a new budget, and he has today. But what we have here is a situation where budgets have nothing to do with the actual spending decisions. They're aspirational documents, and frequently they are political documents. I think always they're political documents. The president actually acknowledged that at the very top when he quoted his father saying, tell me what you value. So, what the budget is by definition, including the president's definition, is an aspirational document about what he and his party value the most. That's not going to survive, though. What ends up happening in these negotiations and the actual spending bills is that you get pretty much the same sort of spending, both domestic and defense, that you have in previous years, with small top-ups after about a 6-month fight where Republicans talk about getting rid of domestic programs and topping up defense, and Democrats talk about maxing out domestic programs and taking money out of defense. In the end, a compromise is reached, and we ultimately move on, as we did a couple of weeks ago. But this budget has very little to do with that, frankly. It's much more a political document designed to provide a set of talking points going into the midterms than anything else.
All right, so nothing you heard today from the president will change your investing outlook, as what I believe you're saying. What would change your investing outlook?
Well, I think generally speaking is, the one place where I've said that I think the president's budget is a bit consequential is in this so-called billionaires tax, but nothing like what the president proposes today will be enacted. Now, they've talked about, for Democrats and the president have talked for quite some time about Build Back Better program. Your correspondent noted this right before the president went on air. And what's going to end up happening there is, they'd like to resuscitate and do something on Build Back Better. People in Washington now talk about the Build Back Better program being dead. I like to quote the Princess Bride movie and say that it's only mostly dead. Senator Manchin continues to offer ways in which certain priorities could be addressed, something on climate, drug pricing regulation, a variety of other things, and would be amenable, for example, to look at how to raise taxes slightly on the top brackets in order to pay for some of that. Yeah. And he's tried to engage progressives on that a number of times, and so far they haven't wanted to. My theory is that at some point progressives and Democrats generally want to, that they'll take a little bit to try to get into the midterms with a record of accomplishment on at least some of these things. But the rest, I don't see mattering that much, frankly. We've known for some time we're going to get increased defense spending well before this budget. the circumstances of the moment demand it.
Well,
and as to the rest, Congress will work that out on a bipartisan basis, and it'll be largely the same.
Well, let me just dive in a little bit to your thoughts on the billionaires tax, because you did say that was the one thing that could perhaps change your investing outlook. I'm curious what your thoughts are about it, because obviously it's called the billionaires tax, but it's a little more complicated than that, as all tax code is. But there are a lot of Americans who do want to know, why doesn't Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, why don't these people pay the same tax rate that I pay? Of course, we understand that it has to do with, stocks and investment. We understand all of that, but there's still an appetite for, there's still an appetite in this country for feeling as if those very wealthy people are paying a little bit more than they're paying now. So how would you reconcile that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right in what you just stated, by the way. That is and I don't mean to denigrate it by saying I think that's largely a political and rhetorical statement coming out of the administration. How they're proposing to deal with it specifically here is by raising rates to 20%, but not controversially, I think, and probably illegally, taking in capital gains that are unrealized. You've got to change the tax code itself to do that, and I think the vast majority of Congress would not be interested in doing that. I don't think you're going to find any large-scale changes to the tax code this year, and the definition of income would certainly qualify as a large change in the tax code. So that's number one. Would they like to do something to increase come back to the basic statement? Would they like to do something to increase rates on the most wealthy Americans slightly in order to pay for some of the things that they want to do? Yes, absolutely, they want to do that, and they also want to be out there on the hustings before the midterm elections, saying that they're trying to do that's a big priority. All that's fair in politics, and all that's fair in policy. But in a closely divided Congress like this, with Republicans and centrist Democrats likely not agreeing with how the administration wants to do that, I think Biden's specific formulation is not possible. Is something possible? Sure. Lots of even centrist Democrats like Manchin have expressed a willingness to engage on that. But Manchin, for example, doesn't get engagement from progressives about what the program should be in a resuscitated Build Back Better and exactly how they should pay for that. So until there's some meeting of the minds on the Democratic side, because they've been very riven by this over the last 6 to 9 months, unless there's some meeting of the minds on the Democratic side, the president's desire is frankly never going to get there.
All right, so it sounds like you don't think this budget plan is going too far. It won't get through Congress. All right.
I think it's just not going to happen. That's all. And what we end up with is the same kind of spending we've had before.
Terry Haines, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you.